All right, welcome. Today, we are going to tackle one of those classic economics questions. You know, the kind that trips up students all the time. But hey, don't worry. By the end of this, you're not just going to get the theory. You'll have the complete blueprint for absolutely acing the exam answer.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the problem itself. Then, we'll break down the core concepts you absolutely need to know. After that, we'll build the answer visually, piece by piece. We'll even uncover a really surprising twist. And finally, I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide to getting that perfect score. Sound good? Let's get started.
Okay, so what is this classic problem we're talking about? You know, the one that gives so many econ students a headache? Let's get the exact exam question up on the screen so we know exactly what we're dealing with.
And there it is. Now look closely because it's actually a two-part question. The first part asks you to derive the demand curve. That means they want to see your work, the whole process. But the second part, that's the tricky one. It asks if the curve is always negatively sloped. That's a trick question. It's basically asking you to challenge one of the first laws you learn in economics. So let's break this whole thing down right now.
Okay, before we even think about drawing a single line on a graph, we've got to build our toolkit. The entire answer to this question, I mean all of it, hinges on understanding these two powerful economic forces that are basically in a constant tug of war with each other. So, first things first, what in the world is an inferior good? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It's just a good that you buy less of when your income goes up. Think about it like this. Instant noodles, right? When you're a student, you're probably living on them. But once you graduate and get that first big paycheck, you're probably going to swap those noodles for, actual restaurant meals. That's an inferior good, right there. Perfect example.
Next up is the substitution effect. Honestly, this one is just pure common sense. When the price of something drops, it becomes a better deal compared to everything else, right? So what do? You substitute towards the cheaper thing. It's just logical. That's why the substitution effect is so predictable. Price goes down, the amount you want goes up. Simple.
But, and this is a big but, here comes the twist. The income effect. See, when a price falls, your overall purchasing power goes up. You just feel a little richer, right? Now, for a normal good, feeling richer means you buy more stuff. But for an inferior good, remember our instant noodles, feeling richer actually makes you buy less of it. Why? Because you can finally afford something better. And this right here, this is where the whole conflict comes from.
So you see the problem, right? This is the core conflict. When the price of an inferior good drops, it's like you've got these two little voices arguing in your head. The substitution effect is yelling, hey, it's a bargain, buy more. But at the same time, the income effect is whispering, dude, you feel richer now. You can afford better stuff. Buy less of this. So, which voice wins? The answer to that one question, it determines everything. All right, theory's great, but let's actually see this in action. We are now going to build the graph, step by step, so you can see exactly how this tug of war between the substitution and income effects plays out visually.
Okay, so the entire price change can be broken down into three main moves on our graph. We've got the initial starting point, then we isolate the substitution effect, and finally, we see what the income effect does. Let's start at the beginning, at point 1. Okay, so here's our starting point. We have a consumer, and they're at their initial happy place, this equilibrium point, E1. They're on their original budget line, PL1, and they're consuming a certain amount of this good, which we'll call X1. Everything's stable for now. Okay, now watch this. The price of our inferior good falls. See how the budget line pivots out to PL2? Now, to isolate just the substitution effect, we slide along that original indifference curve to a new point, E2. That first jump from E1 to E2, that is the pure substitution effect. And just like we said, it makes the quantity demanded go up from X1 to X2. But wait, we're not done. That price drop also made our consumer feel richer. And since this is an inferior good, what happens? The income effect kicks in and works in the opposite direction. Look, it pushes them from E2 backwards to our final spot, E3, on a totally new indifference curve. And notice what happened to the quantity. It actually decreased from X2 back down to X3.
Okay, so that's how we derive the curve. Pretty cool, right? But now we've got to tackle that second, trickier part of the question. This is the part, by the way, that separates a B answer from an A+.
So let's just ask it straight up. We know the income effect is fighting against the substitution effect. So with that in mind, is the demand curve for an inferior good always going to be downward sloping? What do you think?
The answer is a simple, very direct, and powerful no. And let me show you exactly why.
This table makes it all crystal clear. It really just comes down to a battle. Which effect is stronger? For your standard, everyday inferior good, the substitution effect is stronger, so it wins. The demand curve still slopes down, just like you'd expect. But in this super rare, almost mythical case called a Giffen good, the negative income effect is so powerful it completely crushes the substitution effect. And for these weird goods, a price drop actually makes people buy less. The result? A bizarre, totally counterintuitive, upward-sloping demand curve. Wild, right?
Look, knowing the theory is one thing. That's half the battle. But actually translating that into a clear, killer answer when you're under pressure in an exam, that's a whole other skill. So let's build that perfect, top-scoring answer right now.
Here it is, your 5-step guide to a perfect answer. Step 1. Always define your terms first. Step 2. You need a clean, perfectly labeled diagram, no excuses. 3. Walk the examiner through that diagram step by step, just like we did. 4. Answer that second question with a bold, direct no. And finally, step 5. You have to explain both cases, the standard inferior good and the special Giffen good. That's how you show you've really mastered the concept.
You should really think of this as the examiner's secret checklist. This is what they're looking for: a flawless diagram, a super clear explanation of that tug-of-war between the substitution and the income effects, the correct answer, no, to that second question, and crucially, you have to clearly distinguish between a regular inferior good and a Giffen good. You nail these 4 points, and you are golden. You're getting top marks for sure.
All right, so we've totally nailed this specific question. But real mastery, it comes from connecting these ideas to the bigger picture in economics. So, if you want to take this further, what should be next on your study list?
So, to really deepen your understanding, here are 3 things I'd really recommend. First, go look up the Slutsky equation. It's basically the hardcore math behind the graphs we just drew. Second, just practice. Practice drawing the graphs for normal goods, inferior goods, and Giffen goods until you can do it in your sleep. It's like muscle memory. And third, start exploring related ideas, like corner solutions, to really round out your knowledge of how consumers make choices.
And I'll leave you with this one final thought to chew on. We just proved that the famous law of demand, price goes down, quantity goes up, isn't actually a law at all. It has exceptions. So that kind of makes you wonder, right? What other fundamental laws of economics might have some hidden exceptions just waiting to be discovered?